Good morning. Real good to see you guys. I am excited to be back with you as always. I want you to turn to Deuteronomy chapter 24. I'm going to start with a statement in that passage this morning. Hope that you've had a good, restful couple days, or at least good food or something. It's been a good time for us, for sure. But it's good to be back with you guys. And I hope that we can spend some time together talking about some stuff that I think is pretty important. And I just want to remind you, we have been discussing once a month something about homes, families. We spend a lot of time in marriage, and actually this morning we're going to spend a little bit more time in marriage. But we're looking at transitioning, Lord willing, in December. I think I'll start talking about family relations and how parenting or being kids or whatever, how some of those relationships work. I do want to focus one more time, though, on marriage. And just my normal caveats apply to when we're talking about marriage. Not everybody in here is married. Some of you might be looking forward to being married someday. Some of you, there's no chance that you'll ever get married. And that's fine, no matter where you are. Remember that we have been seeing how our marriages reflect our relationship with Jesus. And that's what Ephesians 5 is all about. The great mystery that the reason that God set up marriage in the first place was to show us a glimpse of what that relationship should look like, our relationship with Jesus. And so no matter if there's not, marriage is not on the table for you, that's okay, because all of the things that we're going to be talking about can definitely apply to our relationship with the Lord and in general with relationships with each other. Now, one thing I want to really focus on this morning, and here's what this lesson is really going to be about. We've talked about how this marriage relationship is a covenant, and it shows our relationship with the Lord. And so one of the main things that Jesus has instituted marriage for is to show us what it is to be holy. And we've talked a lot about that, about how marriage can help us to get to that point. But I want to think about what the world says about marriage. What would you say? What would you expect? Most people, just worldly minded, would say that marriage is for. Like, what's the ultimate goal of marriage? The word probably starts with an H and ends with happy, because that's what a lot of people look. It's happy, in case you didn't know. Marriage is designed to make me happy. So, like, that's really what I want out of marriage. I want to be happy. And God wants me to be happy, right? So, like, no matter what I have to do in order to be happy, that's what I need to do. And so if this marriage isn't working out, you know what I could just do? Find someone else who's going to make me happy. And that's not wise. And we're going to look at a little bit why. But when we hear people saying that, what's our response to that? Sometimes we automatically jump and say, well, actually, marriage is designed to make us holy. So God don't care if you're happy, as long as you're holy. Does God care that we're happy? I mean, is it possible, just hear me out, that we could be holy and happy? Have you ever known anybody who's married that is also happy? Be careful how you answer that, I guess. If you look at Deuteronomy 24 and verse 5, I referenced this verse before, but I think it would be good to look at. Deuteronomy 24, verse 5, when a man takes a new wife, he shall not go out with the army, nor be charged with any duty. He shall be free at home 1 year, and shall give happiness to his wife whom he has taken. That phrase really stands out to me a lot. So, young guy who's just married isn't supposed to go off and do military service for at least a year because he's supposed to stay around home. And what was his job, his purpose? To give his wife happiness, to provide happiness, to make her happy. Sometimes I think that we lose sight of that, especially the longer that you're married. You lose sight of because here's what happens a lot of times. We look at marriage as a way for me to be happy. I want to be filled with happiness, so you need to provide that to me. Now, actually, one job that we have in marriage is to provide happiness, to try and do what we can to make the other person happy. Now, sometimes it's just unavoidable, and happiness can be fleeting. But don't forget the other side of the equation. it's not just happy that we're concerned about. Our primary goal, and I would say that marriage is designed first and foremost to make us holy. That is the goal. Holiness is the ultimate goal. Happiness is a side product. And sometimes if we change the way we think, we can learn to be happy from things that are actually making us holy. If we look at marriage, it is designed as a way to make us more holy, because there are things in our lives that we probably don't realize that we're doing, maybe some sins that we don't even realize that we have these sinful attitudes and whatever. But marriage sort of forces us to deal with our pride, our impatience, our selfishness, and other sins. Because it comes to the surface, and it's really impossible to hide who we really are to someone who's living with us like 24/7. And so that forces some things to the front. Now, here's another thing about marriage. You don't really find a good marriage. That's not something, it's not like I'm searching and finding the person who is going to give me the ultimate marriage. A good marriage is something that you build, and you build it together. It's not something that just happens to you, that just rains down from heaven. It's something that we both are working towards. And if you think of it like this, what is the phrase that people use when they're attracted to someone and they start going out and they're telling everyone about how good their relationship is? Sometimes we say things like, "We fell in love." It's like, did you really fall in love? Like, really, you kind of jumped into love, didn't you? Like, you don't just accidentally, oh, here it is. But it's something that you, like, jump in and you start enjoying together. Instead of looking at love as primarily just like some kind of chemistry thing that's happening between people, it's more of like a craftsmanship. God is helping us to build each other in this. Now, something that can help with this. Why do marriages fail? Why do people give up on marriage? I think probably a lot of the same reasons why people give up being a Christian in general. Remember, we talked about the parable of the sower, but we focused more so on the soils. What kind of soil are we? And I think this applies to marriage in a lot of ways as well. You think about the trodden down soil where the seed never gets anywhere. Some marriages fail pretty much from the get-go because there is absolutely no root whatsoever. You might think of like the rocky soil marriage when as soon as the excitement wears off, like it's just you're automatically looking for something else, and it's done. And maybe you're looking for someone else to fill that excitement. The thorny marriage, where, yeah, you're married and you have a decent relationship, but you also have other things that are vying for your attention. There's money and stress and work and kids and pleasure and screen time, whatever. But then you have the good soil. And this is why marriages are successful. The heart is prepared to grow and you can produce fruit. And it really comes down to where our heart is when we're entering this marriage and what we are focused on. Marriage really does teach us self-denial. Well, it should. We should approach marriage from this standpoint. In Luke 9:23, Jesus said, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me." The part about that really, man, it makes me uncomfortable, is the part that says we take up our cross daily. It's like a daily thing. Like there's sacrifices we make on a daily basis. And there is no other relationship that we see that more so than marriage, because marriage is a daily thing. It's something that we continually are working towards and continually see this. And so God can teach us a lot of like patience and humility and sacrifice and the benefits of even confession and grace, especially. Like all of these things, we learn holiness through all of this. But here's the real battle. And I think this is what really, really helps. It really hurts us. We have to be mindful of. Problems in marriage usually come because you are married to a human And you yourself are a human. And when we interact with other humans, we bring ourselves into this situation. And a lot of times, we have some unmet expectations. I think this is so damaging and so hurtful because sometimes we don't let our spouse know what our expectations are. We just assume they should know what our expectations are. Or maybe we think that they should be able to guess. They know me well enough. They should figure out what I want. But do they? We're really good at not understanding what the other person really wants. Okay, so you think about this. Going into a marriage, you're both from like different households. You were raised differently. And so you might already have some built-in expectations of what like household chores look like who does which chore, who's going to take out the trash, who's going to do the laundry, who's going to cook, who's going to clean up, how often are we going to do dishes? Are we okay with dishes in the sink? Is that okay? What about like, laundry? Who's doing that? Are you okay with like socks laying everywhere? Like, is that an okay thing? Is that how like your family was raised? Maybe some people are all good with that. Maybe you're not. Is there a certain way that the towels have to be folded? Like, is it like the trifold thing, or is it okay? Can you just like put it in half and just stuff it in there? Like, does it matter how you hang up a shirt? Does it matter like all of these things? Ketchup. Does it go in the fridge or like a barbarian on the counter? Like, there are people who have different ideas of what kind of salsa are we going to buy? We're going to buy the chunky salsa, or are you going to buy that creamy stuff? Like, there's so many things that you just automatically, this is what civilized people do. This is how we live our life. How are we going to spend family time? What does family time look like? What do holidays look like? Where are we going to go? Who are we going to see? How are we going to spend our time? What do vacations look like? Are we going to go and like chill by the pool and hang out for a week? Or are we going to go like mountain climbing and extreme ultra marathons? Look, there's a lot of stuff to consider with that. And finances. I mean, if you are not a person who saves money, then you are married to someone who likes to save money. It's just all of these things. We have different ideas about what is helpful and what we're going to do. And we have to understand our spouse is not going to understand their expectations and our expectations of them unless we talk about it. And we have to be open about that. And anytime we find ourselves feeling frustrated at the other person, we need to think, first of all, hold up. Did I express this frustration? Did I express my expectation or what I envisioned to be what needed to happen before that? Or was it like I just handed them like a script and they didn't realize that they were in a play? And I want them to follow the rule. So let me. This is a completely off-topic illustration, but I think it can help. There was one time I was like 4 years old, maybe, and I decided I wanted to play hide and seek with my parents. They didn't know we were playing. They were really scared for a while. I got in trouble for that. And that's the thing. If you don't tell the person, hey, we're playing a game right now, like, they're not going to know. And things can get out of hand. That's not great. So, open up. Like, discuss those things. Discuss what is parenting going to be like? Are we on the same page with discipline? And all of those things. There's an unlimited amount of things you need to discuss and think through with that. But that's just one side of what makes this hard. Another side, think about the works of the flesh, just in general. Now, some of the reasons that we don't do what we should do is because we are led by the flesh. And if you look at Galatians 5, there's a lot of these are super applicable to marriage. And again, this is applicable no matter what. But if you think about how these works of the flesh, how they operate, if we are so totally focused on ourself, that can lead us down some paths that aren't so good. I mean, you've got a lot of okay, in verse 19, the deeds of the flesh are evident, which are immorality, impurity, sensuality. Sometimes, if you are looking for satisfaction from a physical standpoint in someone who is not your spouse, That is not going to lead to a good situation. And we'll talk more about that in a future lesson. But just keep in mind that when we are focused too much on our own desires and don't care about the other person as much, that's not going to be a good situation. There's so many other things listed here, though. Idolatry, sorcery, enmities, strife, jealousy, outburst of anger, disputes, dissensions, factions, envying, drunkenness, carousing, and all of those other things. And we understand those works of the flesh, they wage war against our soul. And that's the sort of thing that will keep us out of the kingdom of God. But the person we're married to will see that in us probably more so and quicker than anyone else. And you think about how this works, especially those things in here like jealousy and fits of anger and some of the envying stuff, selfish ambition. What does all that lead to? I mean, jealousy can lead to distrust. Fits of anger, maybe you create this fearful situation. If we have selfish ambition, we're only going to be concerned about ourselves. And here's where things like scorekeeping, do you know what I mean, like scorekeeping in marriage? Like, and it could be something along the lines of, oh, you made me mad for this, and I was good for this, and I did this. Or it could be like silly things, like, did you know in the past year I did laundry 47 times and you've only done it 43 times? You need to step up. Like, that's a silly example of that, but there's so many things where we really put our spouse in a bad situation. The dissensions and divisions thing. Sometimes I think we could be very divided in our own house. And when that happens, we can kind of like emotionally distance ourselves. And this is another thing that the unmet expectations thing. How do you deal with conflict? How do you, like, are you the type of person that you need some time, you need some space, you need some thinking time, and you need to just, figure it out on your own and then come together and work through it quietly? Or are you somebody who just has to talk it out right there? We have to know that about each other. And what happens sometimes is we don't know the type of, communication style the other person has, and we start having these conflicts, and we don't know why it's such a conflict. But what happens is it leads you to grow further and further apart and distance yourself from the other person. I mean, those outbursts, like the outburst of anger there, that can lead to wounded spirits. It's just make you feel like you have to walk on eggshells the whole time. And maybe even bitterness. Bitterness is such a dangerous place to be if we start feeling bitter towards the other person. Now, that can cause long stretches of times where you're not even talking. And you're not even like coming together to discuss anything. And you just feel emotionally distanced. Now, that can lead to some other sins and other problems as well. Because the more that you feel like I cannot be close to the person I'm supposed to be closest with in the world, the more that you might start looking other places to try to fill some of those needs. We'll talk about that more here in a sec. But if you think about all of these things, how these operate, if I don't do what I'm supposed to do, you know what that does to my spouse? It makes it easier for her not to do what she needs to do. And there's this downward spiral. I mean, we always have this thing, if one withdraws, the other becomes defensive, and if one becomes harsh, the other is resentful, and it's just this never-ending cycle of lack of forgiveness leads to more bitterness, which leads to more anger and resentment and more hurt feelings, and it's just sin can multiply in the home, and it just takes one sin to create this whole chain reaction of other sins. Remember in Matthew 7 when Jesus was talking about how we shouldn't be hypocritical? And he used this illustration of, it's like someone, if I see that there's a speck of something in your eye and I go to like get it out of your eye, but then I don't even realize there's like this 2x4 sticking out of my eye, and I'm trying to like help you, but this thing's in my way and I don't really see clearly, but I don't even know it's there, and I'm trying to get the speck out of your eye. Like, what does that tell you to do? Hypocrite, take the beam out of your own eye before you can help the person with a little speck of dust in their eye. Do you think that in marriage it's possible for both people, both spouses, to have sin in their lives and to have some problems? Yeah, actually, it's more than possible. It is a guarantee. Like, you are, I hate to tell you this, you are a sinner. You are. Actually, I don't hate to tell you that because the Bible says, like, you are a sinner. But the thing is, you are also married to a sinner. And this is going to cause some problems. Because a lot of times, and here's what happens in marriages, we have this mentality that I'm doing everything right, and this other person has the problem. If they would fix their problems, then we would have a much better marriage. Now, in some cases, that might be true. But I would say 100% of the time, there's something that we all need to work on. Like, there are things in our lives that we need to work on and make sure that we're focusing on our faults as well. Because, do you remember what John said about if we say that we have no sin? Do you remember how he finished that statement? 1 John 1:8. He says, if we say we have no sin, we deceive ourselves. He doesn't say that if we say we have no sin, we might actually be deceiving others. Have you ever thought about why he doesn't say that? It's because other people can see our sin, especially someone we're married to, someone who's around us all the time. Like, they have no problem pointing out your sin. It's like, yeah, it's right there. It's obvious. The only person that we're deceiving when we are being sinful and trying to deceive is ourselves. We're the only ones that we're fooling, because we sure ain't fooling no one else. Our spouse, they see our flaws. They see the selfishness, the insecurity, our stubbornness, our harshness, our pride, our defensiveness, all of those things. And this is why marriage requires a lot of humility. Understanding that I'm not where I need to be, and I need help with this. And I want to say something. And some of you might feel this is controversial. I don't know. But I'm always an advocate for both spouses to have full access to all of the social media accounts, all the emails, text messages of the other spouse. Like, have all the passwords, just have an open door policy. Anytime you want to look at anything on my phone, that's fine. Because I think what can happen, anytime that we start feeling like, I need to delete this message, or I need to clear my search history, or I need to get rid of this app, or I need to, whatever. If I'm doing anything like that, that's telling you that there's something wrong, that I'm trying to be deceptive, that I'm trying to deceive, that I'm not being truthful, I'm not being open and honest, and there's something going on that doesn't need to be going on. It's not that the other person is just super paranoid and they just want to trap you in something. No, I think this is just being open with each other. That helps us to have this just idea of openness, so that way that we can both feel like we're in this together and we're trying to help each other. When we start trying to demand the other person to make us happy, that's not really going to work out. I found this quote, and I love this. This guy, actually, a lot of what I'm telling you this morning came from a book called Sacred Marriage, and it was really, really helpful and inspiring. But the author said this: "I'm happiest when I work at being a better husband, not demanding a better wife. Because if all I did is just demand you be better, how happy do you think I'm going to be? Like, that's not going to be a source of happiness. But where it really comes in is when you work to serve, like being a better husband, being a better wife. When we find ourselves in the role of a servant, and that's actually, by the way, what Jesus tells us to do, then we're going to feel more fulfilled overall, because we're doing what we need to be doing. So here's what I would say is one of the best ways to grow in marriage. And this, again, doesn't apply just to marriage. This is just in general. If you ever find yourself like, I'm just really dissatisfied with life and how things are going, find a way to serve somebody. Like, that will create a sense of humility in us, and that helps in general. But when you think about marriage, a lot of people, especially before you get married, what are the questions that you ask and that the things that you're looking for in a spouse. No, does she make me happy? Does he meet my needs? Is she attractive? Is he successful? Do we have fun together? And those aren't bad questions to ask before you're married. Those can be some good things to think through and to help understand. But once you're married, I think those questions completely change, because it's no longer, does she still make me happy? Is he still, like, is all of this still okay? I think we need to change our question, and we do need to ask something along the lines of, how can I serve my spouse? This is really at the heart of Christian marriage. Because otherwise, what's going to happen? We're going to start feeling dissatisfied in some way in our marriage. We're going to be discontent. And we'll start asking ourselves, did I marry the right person? And let me tell you, if you are married, yes, you married the right person. And the reason I could say that is because you don't have another option. Like, that is the person you're married to. And so it's not a matter of, and you don't need to be dwelling on, well, should I have, or, what. We're past that. You're at a point where, okay, we've got to find out how to make this work. And so how can I serve my spouse? Now, the tendency is, because if our mindset is all about, am I still feeling fulfilled, what happens is if you start growing discontent. Maybe just things aren't as exciting as they used to be. And you just, the reality of the mundane life has set in. And you wake up day in, day out, and do the same things over and over. And it just feels like everything is just so monotonous. And there's just that excitement, that spark of the relationship that you had at the beginning, that's just not there anymore. And so what do you do with that? Things are getting old. Maybe you start feeling like, I just don't know if I love them anymore. Here's the thing, though. Love isn't a feeling. Like, love, those are actions. Those are things that we do. And it's things that we get involved in. So when we start noticing that, and we start feeling like, ooh, I'm not feeling it anymore. I'm not feeling this connection. Things are just getting old. You know what happens? And you know what happens to a lot of people in a lot of marriages? You start noticing, but there's someone else who does kind of make me happy. And there's someone else that I feel like I'm connected to. And we're able to talk. And I feel like I could open up. And this person, we share common interest. And it's so exciting, because now I have that spark again, and that energy and that drive, and I could talk to this person. And my spouse, I don't feel like I'm close to them anymore. And you start in your own mind thinking, this other person is going to make me feel more fulfilled. They're going to make me happy, where this person doesn't make me happy anymore. And that feeds into our selfish desires. If you ever start feeling anything along these lines with someone that you are not married to, run away. Like, get away from that situation. Cut off all community. Do whatever you can to stay away from that, because that's not going to be helpful in any way. And that's how affairs start. What we need to do instead, so cut off ties with that person, replace our selfishness with submission, and look for ways to serve our spouse. Find ways to bless them instead of criticize. Listen to them instead of lecture. Give more than we demand in the relationship. Love them even when it's inconvenient. And here's the hard part. Serve them even when it feels like you are being unappreciated. That's tough. Because when you feel like you're not appreciated for what you're doing, it makes you want to stop. It makes you want to not go and continue doing that anymore. Just continue serving. Because ultimately, you're not really serving the other person. You are, but you're not. Because ultimately, service is to God. Whatever you do in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord. Like we are looking to serve God through the way that we obey. And so even if you are trying to serve someone and they're just not paying attention at all, they don't really care at all, and especially if you feel like they don't deserve it. Well, you know who does deserve it? God does. And so by our serving, even in those difficult situations, we show our obedience to the Lord because that is the right thing. And again, this is not just in marriage. This is just in general. But we need to keep that in mind. And sometimes, even, what can happen is when we're serving, and especially when things aren't going well, if your spouse starts to do things to serve you, you get kind of defensive. It's like, why are you doing this? Like, I don't like that. Like, or you're just doing this to try to get on my good side, or whatever. Sometimes we have to let them serve us too. So when they are trying to serve, let them serve. You remember when Jesus was washing the disciples' feet, and he got to Peter? Remember what Peter said? Don't you do it. Like, nope, I will never let you do that. Jesus was trying to serve him. There was no reason why Jesus should have been the one serving, right? Peter should have been washing his feet. But no, Jesus was serving Peter, and he said, no, you're going to let me do this, because that was an example. Sometimes we need to let others grow through that as well. And again, we're not demanding that the person serve. It's not like you go home and be like, honey, wash my feet. Like, no, like, it has to be a voluntary thing. It's something that we're both into. Now, here's the last point that I want to make. We need to grow in forgiveness, because forgiveness is one of the most important things to have in marriage. Again, you are a sinner and you are married to a sinner. There's going to be sin somewhere in your marriage, and there's going to be something that we have to forgive. Like, it's required. That's something, and it's going to be a continuous thing. There's going to be something all the time that we have to watch out for, and that we have to understand, this is why we're doing this. This is why we're here. You think about Romans 3:20 talks about how the law was put into place to show us our sin, to reveal our sin. Sin revealed is one thing, but you know what the law could not do? Forgive sin. That's what Jesus came to do. So really, the reason that we're able to have forgiveness is Jesus, obviously. And the reason why we're able to forgive others is also because of what Jesus allows us to do. I will say as well, though, forgiveness is a process. We have to learn how to forgive, and we have to get better at forgiving. Sometimes what happens is we forgive, kind of like, yeah, I'll forgive you, but I'm going to remember it. And then later on, you might be like, okay, like, I've forgiven you of so much dumb stuff that you've done. It's like, does that sound forgiving? And here we go back to scorekeeping again. Sometimes that holds us back in our forgiveness. I know you've heard this quote, but I really like it. Bitterness is like a poison. If we're not forgiving people, if we're holding it all in, it's like drinking poison and hoping the other person suffers because of it. It's like, what do you think is going to happen? It's like, I'm sitting here and I'm all like frustrated and fuming and angry, and then you're over like smiling like hee. You know what that makes me feel? Even madder. And then my blood pressure goes up and I get sick, all of these things. That's not going to help looking at other people. We might think that I'm just not good at forgiving. Like, I don't have that skill or ability. They're actually, well, think of it this way. We're usually better at forgiving ourselves than we are others. Because we think about the things that I've done and the things that you've done. We all are pretty decent at forgiving ourselves. I know sometimes we're pretty hard on ourselves for a lot of things. But in general, I think that I'm pretty good at forgiving myself. Because I know all of my excuses that I have for doing the things that I did. And so I'm like, well, I can justify it because of this or for that. And so I'm pretty good at forgiving myself. The thing is, I'm not so good at forgiving others. What I need to do, though, is look at, okay, I forgive myself for a lot of dumb stuff. Why don't I forgive other people? Like, they're in the same situation I am. Because ultimately, here it is. We're putting God first in this relationship. We forgive because God forgave us. And we've read those passages. We've talked about this before. Just how God will forgive us the same level that we forgive others. Marriage is not an exception. Actually, marriage is probably the training ground where we see that the most, and we see that more clearly than anything else. how are we forgiving in marriage? What does that look like? And would we say that we are forgiving just as God forgave us? And it's not because our spouse is so amazingly perfect. It's because God is amazingly perfect. And he's the one who's asked us to do that. And that's where we truly learn how to share grace with each other. Marriage is designed, first and foremost, to make us holy, for sure. But we can find happiness in that. When we pursue holiness, we actually find joy. When we're able to battle our flesh, we can find peace. When we learn to serve and to actively serve, we build unity together. And when we learn how to forgive, we create safety and grace. And that helps us to grow into something that's even better and better. So the happiest marriage we can have is when both spouses are fully pursuing the Lord and making sure that we're doing what we can to be holy and righteous in His sight and to serve and to be forgiving. Because ultimately, that's what Jesus did for us. And again, all of this, marriage, like the reason that we have marriage, the reason why God invented marriage is to teach us what our relationship with Him looks like. And so, number one, does your relationship with Him look like that? Do you have a relationship with the Lord? He desires that. He wants that. He died to set you free. And He wants you to come and obey Him. Now, if you are a Christian and you've obeyed the Lord and you just haven't been living your life the way you need to reconcile yourself with the Lord. Come to Him and just pray, ask forgiveness, repent, turn back to Him, and He will extend that forgiveness to you. And do the same thing in your marriages. If you're not married, make sure to keep these things in mind as you're looking for a spouse and going into that. And again, if you're not married and you never will be, is this relationship what my relationship with the Lord looks like? If we can help you in any way in obeying the Lord, please come as we stand and sing.